The early morning sun, a pale, watery gold, streamed into our kitchen, illuminating the millions of dust motes dancing in the air. It was a beautiful lie of a morning. It caught the rich, dark steam rising from 2 mugs of artisanal coffee on our vast, white quartz island. The beans were a new blend he'd picked up, something from a boutique roaster downtown. He'd made a big show of it yesterday, explaining the flavor notes of chocolate and citrus as if he were a sommelier of caffeine. It was all part of the performance. It was our 10th anniversary, and the air was thick with the cloying, manufactured sweetness of it all. Stephen was at his most charming, a persona he could slip into as easily as his tailored shirts, a mask of affable warmth that I now knew concealed a chilling emptiness. He'd made my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, with the edges crisped to a dark lace, just the way my mother used to make them. It was a detail so specific, so tenderly remembered, that a year ago it would have made my heart clench with a profound and grateful love. Now, it felt like a weaponized memory, a well-researched tactic from a dossier he kept on me. He slid a plate in front of me, his smile as bright and sterile as a surgical lamp. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said, his voice a low, practiced purr that once made me feel safe and now made my skin crawl. He leaned in for a kiss, his cologne, a scent I used to adore, now the smell of betrayal, washing over me. I forced myself not to flinch, a tiny, almost imperceptible stiffening in my spine as I offered my cheek. He pressed his lips to it, a dry, proprietary gesture. He either didn't notice my evasion, or more likely, he simply didn't care. The objective was the performance, not the sentiment. "Happy anniversary, Stephen," I replied, my voice a marvel of engineering, pitched just high enough to sound cheerful, yet brittle enough that I feared it might shatter. I focused intently on my plate, on the act of cutting a perfect, neat square from the top pancake, the silver of the fork seeming unnaturally sharp and heavy in my hand this morning. After a few bites of feigned enthusiasm, which I swallowed like medicine, he wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and reached behind the island. He pulled out a sleek, dark leather travel wallet, the kind sold in airport duty-free shops for an obscene price. "I have a little surprise for you," he said, his eyes gleaming with a self-congratulatory light. "I know we said no big gifts this year. A decade is enough of a gift in itself. But 10 years? That's a milestone. That's forever." He slid the wallet across the cool quartz. It glided to a stop right in front of me. With hesitant fingers, I opened it. Inside were 2 first-class airline tickets and my passport, its dark blue cover looking as ominous as a summons. "I'm taking you to Brazil," he announced with a flourish. "Rio de Janeiro, 2 weeks of just us. No phones, no work, just Christ the Redeemer, the beaches of Ipanema, and a private villa." I handled everything. Every single detail. I picked up my passport, its familiar weight feeling alien in my palm. My thumb traced the embossed eagle, a symbol of a country I was about to be exiled from. My photo, taken 5 years ago, showed a woman I barely recognized. Her smile was wide and artless, her eyes full of a naive, boundless trust that now seemed like a stranger's tragic flaw. I felt a cold, heavy dread begin to pool in my stomach, a familiar sensation I'd been living with for months, a constant, low-grade fever of anxiety. Stephen watched me, his expression one of magnanimous, kingly generosity. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as he tapped the cover of my passport with a manicured finger. "Make sure your photo is updated," he said, a playful, cruel smirk touching his lips. "It's a one-way flight." He chuckled then, a short, sharp bark of a sound that held no humor, only triumph. "You'll love it so much, you'll never want to come back." The joke landed in the silent, sun-drenched kitchen with the force of a physical blow. He thought it was clever, a witty flourish to his grand romantic gesture. He thought I was smiling at his wit, at the sheer romance of it all, but I was just baring my teeth, a primal rictus of fury and fear. In that instant, the warm, sunlit kitchen, our beautiful, architect-designed, custom-built cage, suddenly felt airless and terrifyingly small. The walls were closing in, the ceiling pressing down, and he was the one holding the only key, planning to leave me locked inside this new, larger prison and throw the key into the South Atlantic. I knew exactly what he meant. And the most terrifying, empowering part of it all was that he had absolutely no idea that I did. The dread hadn't started with his joke. It had taken root, black and venomous, 3 weeks ago, on a sweltering Saturday afternoon that smelled of cut grass and impending thunderstorms. Stephen was out playing golf at the club, his usual Saturday alibi, a 4-hour block of time as sacred and predictable as Mass. I was in the garage, a space that was supposed to be my sanctuary, filled with half-finished pottery projects, the earthy smell of clay, and the sharp scent of old paint. A space that was truly mine. But for weeks, a quiet, insistent suspicion had been gnawing at me. It started with small things. A credit card statement with a charge from a high-end luggage store I'd never visited. Hushed phone calls that ended the moment I entered a room. The faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume on his suit jacket. So, I wasn't just cleaning, I was hunting. My search led me to the back corner, a graveyard of forgotten things. Behind a stack of unused terracotta pots and a heavy, rolled-up oriental rug we'd bought on a whim and never found a place for, I saw it. A suitcase. It was a sleek, pearlescent, white hard-shell carry-on, a brand I'd never seen before. Certainly not part of our mismatched, well-worn collection of Toomey luggage. It was small, feminine, and utterly out of place. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. The lock was a simple 3-digit combination. My hands shook as I entered the numbers. I tried his birthday, 0-8-1-2. Nothing. I tried our anniversary, 1024. Nothing. Then, with a sudden, bitter intuition that felt like swallowing acid, I tried the birthday of his new executive assistant, a woman named Audrey Winter. I only knew it because he'd made me buy a ridiculously expensive gift certificate for her birthday last month, claiming it was for Team Morale, 0-2-1-5. Click. The latches sprang open with a soft, damning sound. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. The contents were packed with a cool, meticulous precision, a curated collection for a tropical, life-altering getaway. There was a silk sarong in a vibrant emerald green, a color Stephen had recently commented he adored. There were 2 bikinis from a Brazilian designer brand, both in a size smaller than mine, the kind I'd seen Audrey post on her private, but not private enough, Instagram. There was a bottle of Chanel perfume I didn't recognize, a heady, floral scent that was distinctly hers. Tucked into a zippered side pocket was a brand new travel guide for Brazil, with sticky notes marking sections on Florianopolis, a beach city south of Rio. But the final damning pieces of evidence were in 2 separate velvet boxes. The first held a small, exquisitely crafted gold key on a delicate chain. A key to his heart. The kind of cheesy, romantic gesture he hadn't made for me since our honeymoon. It was a gift for a new beginning, his and hers. The second box contained a single, perfect diamond earring. I recognized its partner immediately. I had seen Audrey Winter wearing it at the company holiday party. She'd claimed she'd lost the other one. A lie. He had it. He was holding it for her. I closed the suitcase, my hands surprisingly steady now, the trembling replaced by an arctic calm. The click of the latches echoed in the silent, dusty garage. I pushed it back into its hiding place, behind the pots and the rug, my mind a whirring, cold machine. This wasn't just a sordid affair. An affair is messy, impulsive, a crime of passion. This was an execution. It was methodical, clinical, and calculated. The secret luggage, the specific destination, the symbolic jewelry, the new life packed and waiting. He wasn't just planning to cheat on me. He was planning to replace me, to surgically remove me from his life as if I were a benign tumor that had suddenly turned malignant. He was going to take me to a foreign country, a place where I knew no one and didn't speak the language, drain our finances, and simply vanish, leaving me stranded with a voided return ticket and a life in ruins. The garage, once my sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum, holding the evidence of my own scheduled burial. That was the precise moment the loving, trusting wife, Megan Price, died, and someone else, someone colder, more careful, and infinitely more dangerous, was born from her ashes. In the agonizing days following Stephen's grand anniversary surprise, I became the world's greatest actress, a Meryl Streep of marital deceit. My life turned into a meticulously staged performance, and I was playing the role of a lifetime, the blissfully happy, giddily grateful wife on the brink of the ultimate romantic adventure. Every morning, I would wake up and carefully apply my mask of joy. I spent hours online, ostentatiously researching restaurants in Rio, exclaiming over photos of infinity pools in Florianopolis. "Oh, Stephen, look at this one! It's been voted one of the most romantic places on Earth. Can we stay here?" I'd ask, pointing to my laptop screen, my voice dripping with an infectious excitement that tasted like ash and bile in my mouth. He would smile that condescending paternal smile, patting my hand as if I were a clever child. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, sweetheart. I've got it all taken care of. The best of the best for my girl." Each term of endearment, every honey and sweetheart, was a small, sharp jab, a constant, painful reminder of the monumental, gaslighting lie we were living. He saw my compliance as weakness, my manufactured excitement as gullible naivety. He was so caught up in his own genius, his own intricate deception, that he couldn't imagine I was capable of my own. He had no idea my frantic online searches weren't for five-star resorts, but for the most feared divorce attorney in the state. I found her through a college alumni network, Madeline Sharp. Her name was spoken in a mix of fear and reverence in legal circles. Her specialty was high-asset, high-conflict divorce, particularly those involving international fraud. They didn't call her the shark. They called her the piranha, for her ability to strip an opponent down to the bone before they even knew they were bleeding. I remembered her from a political science seminar, a fiercely intelligent woman who argued with the tenacity of a bulldog. I made the call from the walk-in pantry, huddled between shelves of imported canned goods and artisanal pasta, my voice a frantic, desperate whisper into the receiver. "Madeline, it's Megan Price. We had that Palissy seminar with Professor Davies?" I prayed she'd remember me. There was a beat of silence, and then her voice, as crisp and sharp as her name, cut through the line. "Megan, of course! The one who argued that Machiavelli was an optimist. Long time. What can I do for you?" I took a deep, shuddering breath, the scent of bay leaves and exotic cinnamon filling my lungs. "I need your help, Madeline. I think my husband is planning to abandon me in a foreign country after emptying our bank accounts." The silence on the other end was not one of disbelief, but of assessment. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up, that she'd dismiss me as hysterical. Then she spoke, her voice devoid of shock, replaced by a chilling professional calm. "Okay, Megan. Don't say another word to him, not a single thing. Don't let him know you suspect anything. Play along. Be the perfect, happy, clueless wife. We need his guard to be so far down it's in the basement. Can you get into my office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Don't use a credit card or a rideshare app tied to your name. Take a cab from a few blocks away. Pay cash. And from this moment on, you operate under the assumption that he is tracking your phone, your car, and your every move." The line went dead. I stood there in the fragrant darkness of the pantry, my knuckles white as I gripped my phone. The fear was still there, a cold, hard knot of ice in my gut. But now, it was mixed with something else, something new and volatile. A flicker of hope, a surge of righteous, vengeful adrenaline. The game had changed. He thought he was the predator, a clever wolf stalking his unsuspecting prey. He was about to find out that I was hunting, too. The next day, I told Stephen I was going for a pre-vacation spa day, an early anniversary treat for myself to get relaxed for Rio. He bought it without a second thought, too wrapped up in his own impending triumph to see the lie. He kissed me on the cheek, a dry peck that missed my skin, and told me to get something relaxing before peeling $200 bills from the thick wad in his wallet. The gesture was so dismissive, so patronizing, "Here, little woman, go buy yourself a trinket," that I almost laughed in his face. I drove to a mall several towns over, parked my car, and then walked half a mile to a busy intersection to hail a cab, paying in cash just as Madeline had instructed. My heart pounded with a paranoid rhythm. a mixture of terror and exhilarating resolve. Madeline Sharp's office was on the 40th floor of a gleaming steel and glass skyscraper, a stark, powerful world away from the soft, suffocating luxury of my gilded suburban cage. The space was minimalist and modern, furnished in chrome and black leather, with a sprawling panoramic view of the city that made my own problems feel both immense and, for the first time, conquerable. Madeline was exactly as I remembered from college, only sharper, her formidable intelligence radiating like a physical force. She wore a tailored gray suit that looked like armor, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She didn't waste a single moment on pleasantries. "Tell me everything," she said, her pen poised over a yellow legal pad. Her gaze was intense, dissecting. "Start from the suitcase." Every single detail I recounted the story, my voice surprisingly steady as I detailed the credit card charge, the discovery in the garage, the specific contents of the luggage, the bikini, the book, the single earring, the one-way ticket comment, the name Audrey Winter. Madeline listened without interruption, her expression as unreadable as stone, making small cryptic notes on her pad. When I finished, the silence in the room was absolute. She nodded slowly, a long, deliberate motion. "Okay, this is leagues beyond simple infidelity. This is premeditated, multi-layered fraud. It has all the hallmarks of international asset concealment, conspiracy, and what we can argue is attempted kidnapping by deception. The one-way ticket comment, even framed as a joke, is our cornerstone. It establishes intent, especially when coupled with the meticulously packed luggage for his mistress. He's creating a paper trail, a narrative where you willingly go on a trip and then decide not to come back, which he would use to explain your disappearance, while he liquidates every single thing you own together." Her words sent a shiver of ice down my spine, but her calm surgical demeanor was profoundly anchoring. "So, what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We let him walk straight into the trap he built," she said, a faint, predatory smile finally touching her lips. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing to see. "First, I'll need you to grant me a limited, clandestine power of attorney. That will allow me to act on your behalf without tipping him off. Second, I'm bringing in the best forensic accountant in the city. We need to find where the money is going. I guarantee he's been setting up a web of offshore accounts for months, maybe years. Third, and this is the hardest part for you, Megan, you have to keep playing the part. Be excited. Go shopping for the trip. Pack your bags. Let him think he has won. Let him get drunk on his own arrogance." She leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto mine, hard and bright as obsidian. "He's going to take you to the airport. He's going to believe he's seconds away from pulling off the perfect crime. We're going to let him get that close, so close he can taste it. And then, we're going to take everything." I left her office feeling like I had shed a skin. The terrified, heartbroken victim had walked in. A calculated, vengeful accomplice in my own rescue walked out. The week leading up to our departure was the longest, most treacherous week of my life. I moved through my days in a surreal haze of feigned bliss, a Stepford wife with a smile permanently affixed to my face. I went shopping, buying a new wardrobe for Brazil with his money, each purchase feeling like a small act of rebellion. By night, I became a ghost, a detective in my own home. After Stephen fell into a deep sleep, usually after a glass or two of absurdly expensive scotch, I would slip out of our bed, my movements silent and practiced. I would creep down the hall to his home office. The room, with its dark mahogany desk, tufted leather chairs, and shelves of unread leather-bound books, had always felt like his inner sanctum, a place I was not particularly welcome. Now I saw it for what it was. A crime scene in the making, the nerve center of his entire operation. Guided by Madeline's detailed instructions, I knew exactly what to look for. His laptop was my first target. His password, I guessed on the second try, was the name of his first successful startup, a testament to his staggering ego. It was sickeningly predictable. My fingers flew across the keyboard, silent and swift, my heart in my throat with every click, terrified that a single sound would wake him. The evidence was all there, laid out in a series of neat, chillingly organized digital folders. There were emails between him and Audrey Winter, filled with sickening pet names like My Winter Fox and concrete, detailed plans. They weren't just planning a vacation, they were discussing architectural renderings for a modernist villa in Florianopolis. He'd told her he was finalizing his amicable but sad divorce and would be completely free in a matter of weeks. The lie was so audacious, so utterly devoid of conscience, it stole my breath. Then I found the bank records, working with the forensic accountant Madeline had hired, a man I knew only as Mr. K. I had a specific list of red flags and transaction patterns to search for, and there it was. A complex web of wire transfers, a cascade of payments, each one just under the $10,000 federal reporting limit, funneled into an offshore holding company in the Cayman Islands. The company's name was Winterfell Holdings. He was literally naming his escape plan after his mistress's last name. The arrogance was astounding. Over the last 8 months, he had systematically and illegally drained nearly $3 million from our joint investment portfolios, business accounts, and savings. He was leaving me with a heavily mortgaged house and a mountain of shared debt he intended to pin solely on me. I used my phone, a cheap burner phone I'd bought with cash, to take crystal clear, high-resolution photos of every screen, every transaction log, every incriminating email chain. I documented the flight confirmations, his one-way ticket with me to Rio, and then a subsequent connecting flight for 2 people from Rio to Florianopolis, booked under his name and Audrey's. He had no intention of staying in Rio for more than a single day. It was just a stopover, a place to ditch me before meeting her to begin their new life. Each photo I took, each piece of data I uploaded to the secure server Madeline had set up, felt like loading a bullet into a gun. I was no longer just a victim of his despicable scheme. I was the architect of his downfall. Every night, I would crawl back into bed beside the man who was actively plotting my ruin, the cloying smell of his scotch-laden breath making me physically nauseous. I would lie there in the dark, eyes wide open, and picture his face, that smug, handsome, confident face, when he finally realized the intricate cage he had so carefully constructed for me was in fact his own. The night before our flight was a masterclass in the surreal. Stephen insisted on taking me out to dinner at a ridiculously expensive French restaurant downtown, the kind of place with more waiters than tables and a wine list as thick as a novel. He called it our Last Supper in America, a gallows humor that he found hilarious and that made me have to physically restrain myself from choking on my water. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored Italian suit, looking every bit the successful, doting husband about to whisk his wife away on the trip of a lifetime. I had chosen my own outfit with meticulous symbolic care, a simple, elegant, funereal black dress. It felt appropriate. I was in mourning for the man I thought I had married, for the life I thought we had, for the woman I used to be. The entire evening was a dizzying, high-wire exercise in masterful deception. I smiled until my face ached. I laughed at his self-impressed jokes. I let him hold my hand across the starched white tablecloth, his touch feeling like a spider crawling on my skin, and I didn't pull away. "To us," he said, raising his crystal flute of vintage champagne. The bubbles fizzed and died. "And to our next chapter, a new beginning, away from all this." His eyes were full of a triumphant, predatory light that he mistook for love, for shared excitement. I raised my own glass, my hand perfectly steady, a small miracle of willpower. "To new beginnings," I echoed, my voice as smooth as silk. "May everyone get exactly what they deserve." He beamed, completely, utterly oblivious to the chilling undertone, the double meaning that hung in the air between us. He thought my toast was for us, for our sun-drenched, Caparina-fueled future in his depraved fantasy. For he had no idea I was toasting to his imminent future of courtrooms, legal fees, public humiliation, and a small, sparsely furnished apartment he could barely afford. He talked endlessly about Brazil, painting a vivid, detailed picture of the life that awaited us, a life of leisure, passion, and simplicity. It was a beautiful monologue, passionately delivered, full of lies he'd rehearsed for Audrey. It was also a complete fabrication, and I knew the real script by heart. "I was thinking," I said, Interrupting his fantasy mid-sentence, I swirled the deep red wine in my glass, watching the legs crawl down the side, and looked at him through my lashes, deploying a flirtatious look I knew he found irresistible. With this big move towards simplicity and starting fresh, have you thought about consolidating all our accounts? It might be so much easier to manage everything from one central place, especially while we're overseas trying to relax. I held my breath, watching his face carefully for the tell. For a split second, a flicker of pure animal panic crossed his features. It was there and gone in an instant, but I saw it. He smoothed it over immediately with a placid, reassuring smile. "Already ahead of you, sweetheart," he said, his voice oozing a confidence that was 90% lie. "I've been streamlining things for weeks to make it all seamless for our new life. You don't have to worry about a single thing." The ease with which he lied, the sheer pathological smoothness of it, was breathtaking. He truly believed he was smarter than me, that I was just a pretty, decorative accessory to his life, easily discarded when she was no longer convenient. As he paid the exorbitant bill, dropping a thick wad of cash on the table with a flourish, I felt a profound, icy calm settle over me. This was it. The final performance, the last act. Tomorrow, the curtain would fall, and the applause would be all mine. The morning of the trip arrived, gray and oppressive, the sky heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. I was awake long before the alarm, lying perfectly still, watching the faint, dirty light of dawn bleed into our bedroom. I didn't pack a suitcase. There was no point. My role as the happy traveler was over. Instead, I showered and dressed with the deliberate surgical precision of a soldier preparing for battle. I chose a charcoal gray pantsuit, a stark, powerful silhouette, the kind Madeline Sharp wore like a second skin. It was my armor. I applied my makeup with the same intention, not to look beautiful, but to look formidable, unshakable. When I was done, a stranger staring back from the mirror, I went downstairs not to the kitchen for one last fake breakfast, but to the living room. I sat in the large, imposing wingback chair that faced the front door, the one Stephen pompously called his throne, and I waited. The house was unnaturally, profoundly quiet. There was no smell of coffee, no sound of the television news. There was only the rhythmic, judgmental ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, counting down the final seconds of my old life. At exactly 7 a.m., I heard his footsteps on the grand staircase. He was humming, a cheerful, tuneless, and utterly grating sound that grated on my raw nerves. He appeared in the arched doorway of the living room, pulling a large, black, hard-shelled suitcase behind him. His own bag was packed for a long, luxurious trip. He was wearing expensive, comfortable travel clothes, linen trousers and a cashmere pullover, his hair perfectly coiffed. He was ready. He stopped short the moment he saw me. He took in my severe suit, my rigid posture, the stone-cold, unreadable expression on my face. Then his eyes darted around the room, registering the crucial, jarring detail. My own luggage was nowhere in sight. A line of deep confusion creased his brow. "Megan? What are you doing? The car service will be here in 20 minutes. Aren't you ready to go?" His voice held a sharp note of irritation, the first crack in his charming, benevolent facade. The master of the universe was annoyed that his meticulously planned schedule was being disrupted. I didn't stand up. I didn't even move a muscle. I just looked at him, letting the heavy silence stretch and thicken between us, letting him absorb the profound wrongness of the scene. The power dynamic in the room had fundamentally, irrevocably shifted. For 10 years, I had been the one revolving around his son, my life dictated by his whims and moods. Now, he was standing in my gravity, and he was completely, utterly adrift. "I'm ready, Stephen," I said, my voice low and even, a chilling counterpoint to the ticking clock. "I've been ready for weeks." His confusion deepened, twisting into a dark suspicion. "What are you talking about? What is this? Some kind of joke? Where are your bags?" he demanded, his voice rising, a tremor of panic entering it now. He took an aggressive step into the room, his eyes darting around wildly, as if searching for a logical explanation. He still thought this was some kind of pre-trip, hormonal mood swing, a last-minute bout of nerves he could manage and control with a few platitudes and a condescending pat on the head. He still thought he was in charge. As if on cue, a car door slammed outside. The sound was sharp, final. But it wasn't the gentle purr of the Lincoln Town car he had ordered. It was the heavy, utilitarian thud of a standard-issue sedan. Stephen turned his head toward the sound, a flicker of genuine, primal fear finally entering his eyes. He was beginning to understand that the trip he had so meticulously planned, the great escape to his new life, was not going to happen as planned. As Stephen stood frozen in the doorway, a statue of crumbling arrogance, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite, neighborly chime. It was a sharp, piercing, two-toned summons that shattered the morning's tense quiet. I watched him, a small, cold, deeply satisfying smile playing on my lips. "You should get that, Stephen," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "I believe it's for you." He shot me a venomous look, a roiling mixture of pure fury and dawning panic, before stalking to the front door and yanking it open with a violent tug. Standing on our perfectly manicured flagstone porch were not one, but three figures, arranged in a tableau of his doom. Madeline Sharp was at the front, looking formidable in a dark navy suit that screamed authority, a thick leather briefcase clutched in her hand. Flanking her like sentinels were two uniformed police officers, their expressions impassive, their hands resting near their belts, their very presence an undeniable, world-altering statement. Stephen's face, which had been flushed with anger just a moment before, instantly drained of all color. He looked like a ghost, his mouth opening and closing silently, like a fish gasping for air, as he stared at the unwelcoming committee I had so carefully arranged for him. He stumbled backward into the foyer, his legs seeming to give way, as they stepped calmly and deliberately inside. "What is this? Megan, what the hell is this?" he sputtered, finally finding his voice. It was thin and reedy, all its previous confidence and baritone swagger stripped away, leaving only the panicked bleat of a cornered animal. Madeline stepped forward, her heels clicking decisively on the polished hardwood floor, an impossibly loud sound in the charged silence. "Mr. Price," she began, her voice cutting through the air like ice. "My name is Madeline Sharp. I am your wife's legal counsel." She placed her briefcase on the antique foyer table with a solid thud and opened it, pulling out a thick, intimidating stack of documents. "This is a temporary restraining order, preventing you from accessing, transferring, or liquidating any and all marital assets. We have also, as of 5 minutes ago, filed for an immediate ex parte asset freeze on all known domestic and international accounts, including and especially Winterfell Holdings in the Cayman Islands." At the mention of the name, Stephen flinched as if he'd been physically struck. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Furthermore," Madeline continued, her tone relentless, a prosecutor in her closing argument, "we have provided the district attorney's office with a comprehensive and meticulously documented file of your plan to commit felony wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand larceny, including authenticated wire transfer logs, email correspondence with your accomplice, Ms. Audrey Winter, and your purchased airline tickets. These gentlemen," she said, gesturing with a nod to the officers, "are here to escort you downtown for questioning." One of the officers stepped forward, his expression unchanging. "Sir, you need to come with us." Stephen's wild eyes darted from the officers to Madeline, and finally, they landed on me. The raw, undiluted hatred in them was pure and potent enough to burn. "You!" he seethed, his voice a raw, strangled whisper. "You conniving bitch! You did this!" I finally stood up from the wingback chair, my movements slow and deliberate, and walked toward him, stopping just out of his reach. I looked at the man I had once loved, the man who had planned to leave me penniless and abandoned in a foreign country, and I felt nothing but a vast, liberating, beautiful emptiness. "You were right about one thing, Stephen," I said, my voice clear and steady, and loud enough for everyone to hear. "It is a one-way trip, just not for me." The only trip he was taking was downtown, and I knew, with an absolute and glorious certainty, he wouldn't be coming back.